we'll move on to our last group for today, which is Louise, Michael and Katrina. And their abstract reads, we believe the video conferencing program, Zoom, will help our EWU students. I hope you're going to explain that. Our EWU distance students to understand their written assignments. The face-to-face element will allow better communication for student inquiries, and the desktop sharing function would enhance understanding by allowing the students to actually see what is being explained. Thank you, Louise, Michael and Katrina. Take it away.
Just sharing. Right, everybody see that? Yes, right. Hi, welcome to our Scholarly Symposium presentation. I'm Katrina Johnson, and my group, Michelle Mullaney, Michael Jathor and myself will be discussing Zoom video conferencing for essay writing for university, which is the EWU, for our distance students. We are all part of the STEPS program, so we talk about bridging with students who really don't have a lot of that knowledge and a lot of distance students involved here. So we, as we've said, we believe that the video conferencing program Zoom will help our essay writing distance students to understand their written assignments. The face-to-face element would allow better communication of student inquiries, and the desktop sharing function would enhance understanding by allowing the students to actually see what is being explained. I'm going to be talking about an outline of the problem and what the literature indicates. So one of the biggest issues when dealing with teaching distance education has long been the problem of communicating effectively. I'm sure we can all recall trying to take on a distance education class when snail mail was the only option. Usually the course consisted of a package with all the units' contents to be worked through, and each fortnight the assessment had to be mailed back for marking. The results would then turn up weeks later, and a student had, they just had to work through the content alone, and sometimes the only contact they would get was when they got the assessment and exam results. So student retention was a huge problem, and I have to confess I didn't actually complete the course that I took on. So nowadays we're looking at technology, and technology has made this distance education far more viable. We've got things like online contents, discussion forums, chat sessions, podcasts, video recordings, vlogs like we were just looking at. Now all of these are now commonplace in distance education, but they do all lack one important component, and it's that connection that face-to-face interaction brings to education. So it's proving to be a really important element in distance education, communicating with students face-to-face, being able to actually explain things to them as you do them, using slideshows to enhance your lessons, sharing the screen like we're doing right now, even sharing the screen so you can see what you're typing and what you're doing. Recording, again, like we're doing now for future viewing. These are all now possible with video conferencing technology. Looking at the actual literature, Andrews and Cleese note that distance education through video conferencing software is a unique method of providing real-time face-to-face interaction that enables immediate peer and teacher interaction and feedback. Video conferencing technology is actually believed to be an excellent way to build a community with students through a learner-centered, computer-mediated class, and students can actually keep in contact via the video conferencing when the class is over. The Oxford Dictionary defines community as this condition of sharing or having certain attitudes and interests in common, and this sense of community actually draws the students together and encourages social interaction. So we find that using video conferencing in education actually falls within the framework of socio-cultural theory, where students construct their knowledge through interaction with their environment. Now, it has been found that initially not all students are really comfortable with using video technology, but it's also been seen that continued use of this media reduces the discomfort, because a lot of it comes from not knowing the software, and also those initial computer glitches that we've all had that can make these things a little bit harder to take on. But yeah, with continued use it tends to get a lot easier. So we're actually going to be looking at using Zoom, and as we all know we're using it right now. Zoom was actually designed to be integrated with learning management systems using a URL click-to-call function. So this makes it easier for teachers to integrate it and create virtual classrooms that are accessible across a range of devices. So it's designed to use on computers, tablets and smartphones. In 2015, Western Sydney University started using Zoom. Only 30 users were registered at that point, but by the end of the year, the number had soared to 3,000 users just in that university. Jeff Lambert, the Senior Project Manager in the Information Technology and Digital Services Department of WSU, said that before Zoom, their faculty had no faith at all in video conferencing. But once they'd gotten to use it, he says it had become a huge strategic enabler for transforming their capabilities in the online space. In 2013, Zoom was quoted in saying that they had over 700 universities and colleges using. Nowadays, their most recent quote was that over 5,200 educational institutions, including 88% of the United States top universities, use Zoom for virtual classrooms, online courses, group projects, TA hours and more. So Zoom's gone from, just nothing to being a really, really well-known, well-used application. Andrews and Cleese note that video conferencing has become an essential tool in maintaining course offerings to multi-campus institutions or for dispersed groups of students, and has the potential to promote more interactive and effective teaching and learning processes. Fitzgibbon commented that doing more with less is one of our biggest challenges at universities. We have a growing number of remote students, so we need to change our teaching approach, and technology is the one way to do this. Fitzgibbon also noted that some educators actually believe that technology-based classrooms could produce higher results than conventional teaching methods. I'm going to hand over to Louise now, and she's going to actually discuss the technology integration planning, or as we know it, TIP model.
Thank you, Katrina. So step one is about determining the relative advantage. So in terms of the technology solution, the essay writing for university students will collaborate with their lecturer by attending Zoom sessions so they can hear them speaking live about course material, but particularly assignments. The relative advantage is that the distance students get the benefit of this face-to-face contact with the lecturer at meeting times. This can help solve a major problem for attrition, which is distance students feeling isolated. Right now, apart from a YouTube video to introduce myself at the start of the course, I have no video or face-to-face contact with my essay writing for university students, so Zoom would definitely be a welcome change. So what are the advantages of this solution compared to what we're doing now? So having some face-to-face contact with this group of distance students can ultimately save time, as individual students might be calling and emailing about the same problems, and that's what's happening now. Delivery of live course material is better than those recorded. Distance students can ask questions and take part in any discussions. With Zoom, only the host or lecturer needs to actually log in, and the other users can simply click on a link to join the session really easily. So not really any scaffolding or much prior knowledge is required, so it is easy to use. More personal than discussion forums, which have hundreds of posts. We find that a lot of students turn them off because it's just too many email notifications. Zoom allows sessions to be recorded for students who are unable to attend. So like we do in NOLT, that could be the next best thing. The Show Desktop feature would allow the lecturer to show what they mean in Word or in PowerPoint. So the amount of time and work needed to implement the proposed solution. The work involved for the lecturer would be installing the software and then setting up the meeting and inviting students to join. So that's probably only about 15 minutes all up for both. We think this could definitely be implemented very easily with our students, with that quick email to the group with instructions on how to get Zoom connected using EasyConnect. Now I'm going to move on to step 2, which is about assessing the TPAC. So in terms of technology, we already have good skills here. Zoom only requires a computer, video and a microphone. We've already used Zoom as participants, we're using it now. It's easy to download and sign up, and we know how to set up a meeting. We also know how to record and share the screen. However, We need to actually learn how to put a recording on Moodle. So it's something none of us have done yet. In terms of pedagogy, we do have the skills to use the technology and then teach as normal by demonstrating assignment examples and testing for understanding by asking students to summarise what they've just learnt. We will need to work on reviewing our teaching methods as it gets going and reflect on the learning outcomes for maximum benefit for our students. So if something's not working, we need to get back in there and change it for the next meeting. We can obtain information on the knowledge of good course delivery by reading good articles, undertaking research, and attending conferences if we can. Finally, in terms of the content, the Essay Writing for University course is about the students demonstrating that they can write an academic essay. It's actually 1,600 words. Students get a choice of assignment topics. They've got gender, the environment, technology. So there's scope for the students from year to year to get up-to-date information. We constantly look for current information to share with the class. The students also have to gather more information through basic research using Discovery. We are qualified and have the skills to teach this subject with experience of writing a great volume of essays, undertaking research and writing papers. However, we can always improve on our content knowledge on the gender, environment and technology topics in the course. We will continue to seek out and read journal articles and take on professional development opportunities as they arise. Now I'm going to move on to step 3, which is about deciding on the objectives and assessment. So how will we know whether this is successful? Our higher achievement outcome and assessment will be that the overall achievement on the research paragraph, the annotated bibliography, and the research essay, which are the 3 written pieces of assessment for the course, they'll need to improve by at least 15% as a group compared to the previous distance cohort. That's what we're hoping. We'll create an attitude survey as well to assess how students are finding the new technology after the first Zoom session, rather than having to wait until the end of course evaluations and the teaching evaluations. There could be a small prize on offer for the students who answer the survey, because as we know, students can be reluctant to fill in surveys because they're bombarded with them. Maybe some movie tickets to improve that response rate, because we really want to know whether it's worth using. Improved motivation. Well, lecturers will notice an improved use of Moodle on the Easy Connect. We can check that easily. However, it is important to note that for distance students, it is really difficult to measure their on-task behaviour. Moodle is not necessarily a good indicator. For instance, students could print out large sections and therefore not get as many hits as other students. No prerequisite knowledge or scaffolding is really required, as previously stated. And we're a bit worried about the technology distracting the students when we do these meetings about the 3 written assignments. From experience, when in a Zoom conversation, there can be a lot of different students, a lot of faces on the screen. It can be a bit confusing. This could prove to be quite distracting. So if a student gets off track or starts to sort of ask something that's not really that relevant, we need to rein them in. Otherwise, other students could drift off and not listen as closely as they might otherwise. So we want to really make use of that time to save increasing workload for lecturers, because that's one of the major issues. I've raised this issue with the course coordinator. She's worried about workload for lecturers. So now I'll hand over to Michael to go through the rest of the tip model.
Thank you, Katrina and Louis. We'll continue with our presentation and we'll talk about design integration strategies for Zoom and the environment preparation for Zoom. The teaching strategies and activities that we'll use for Zoom are mostly going to be directed teaching. That is, the lecturer will use the PowerPoint and the lecturer will show examples on the Moodle site. Students will also do a number of activities to enable them to understand the topic well. Students will work individually and in groups. Individually, they will listen to the lecture and that is presented and they will take notes. They will form study groups. That is, they could form study groups. That is, they could be in groups small groups, and in pairs. This will enable the student to be able to share ideas by discussing sample questions and assignments. There will also be a one-on-one support for students as required. The technology support that we'll use will involve instructional video. That is, we will show instructional video to the students to know how Zoom works before using it. There will also be a testimonial video. That is, a student who have already used Zoom before will give his or her testimony about how Zoom works. There will be a technology staff available so that we can contact that technology staff if we need to. The durations for the program, for the Zoom sessions, that is, we'll have it 3 times in a term. That is one for each written assignment, which includes research paragraph, which Louise has talked about earlier. We'll work on references, and we'll work on essay writing, that is 16-word research essay. So there will be 3 sessions in a term for which students will be able to use Zoom session. The preparation, the things that we'll do to be able to use Zoom will include a practice runs as a lecturer with technology staff. That is, there'll be a mock lecture to see how it works before we start using it for the students. We'll check if video can be viewed over Zoom, that is, we'll see if it is working well. Then we'll make sure that all equipment that we are using works well. The instructional environment. The student needs to have an internet browser. And what they need to do is they can click on the link to go to the Zoom session, or they can download the Zoom software and use the meeting ID to be able to join the meeting. We can use a variety, the student can use a variety of devices to be able to access Zoom. Some of the devices that the student can use include mobile phones and laptop. The good news about the Zoom technology is that it's free for all students to use. So there will be no cost for the student to be able to use Zoom. Thank you for listening. And we have our references also here. And if there is any questions, we are ready to answer them. Thank you.
Hello, Sue and Cairns again. If I can jump in and ask a question, that would be awesome. That was such a great presentation. Magnificent use of Prezi. Michelle and I were very impressed. Just a quick question, and I'd be interested in Cherie's view on this as well. I've used Zoom successfully in the past to do great workshops and have had good attendance and things like that, but that wasn't in a university environment. And I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on how are you going to make students go, essentially, especially distance students who just may not be able to attend because they're at work, or I know you can put it on at night, but yeah, parents will have kids, and I'm just wondering how you sort of promote people actually coming along.
I can answer this if you like, guys. Yeah, because I was the one that came up with the idea, even though it sounded weird because we're already using Zoom. It seems like a rip-off, but I actually want to try to implement this. So I'm only fairly new to higher education, as I've said in the forum, so this term is my first time teaching distance students. So I've got 2 internal groups, 2 subjects, and 2 distance ones, and they're really big. And studying this term, I've just found, like, I was happy to go ahead on the weekend and answer emails. So essay, the other subject's quite a lot easier, prep skills, but this one I find, the cohort of students, a lot of them, they've got a grade 8 level of education, or grade 9, or some of them could be quite weak. But we have to draw that line in the sand, and even with these sessions, we're just aware, we're talking in our group about, hey, don't have too many though. And I'd be willing to, you know, offer some outside of hours, although, as I said, the course coordinator was worried, oh, well, if you do that as a lecturer, the others need to do that as well. But then I've had emails and, you know, first time doing distance, I guess, a few times I've just rang a student and next thing it's 25 minutes. And the boss was saying, oh, look, you know, cut them off at 15. But, you know, it's just that idea of, I guess it could well, you know, take some of that pressure off, but you do need to be careful because she said from her experience of years of teaching this, that especially for our cohort that are quite low, you know, look, they've got to do it themselves, they've got to be able to demonstrate it themselves, so too much help could we, you know, like just say, okay, well, we're going to have an outside hours session, even on a Thursday afternoon or something, whoever can make it. At least it can be recorded, but just trying to, it's just another option. I mean, they can still email, they can still phone, but sorry, I was going off track a bit, but does that answer your question? I guess it's just putting it out there in terms of will they come? Well, if there's one, it's the same with Collaborate, my colleagues do. If one comes, well, I'd still run it. You know, even with Zoom, we found as we went along, there might have only been 4, but maybe most of you went and watched it later when you got up to it. Because there's ones with extensions too. These ones have a knock-on effect. The ones that have an extension for the first, they're not even up to it by the time you get to the essay part. So they mightn't even be ready to view that Zoom, waste that time. They're still panicking about the last assignment. So they could watch that recording. Yeah, anyway, I'm going on a bit. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. I guess it depends on what type of students you're talking about, like the ones that seek deeper learning and things like that. I was just going to say, when I was an undergraduate many moons ago, we were forced to go to them. Like that was part of our like tutorials and workshops. That was actually compulsory. Does CQU do that, Cherie? Do you happen to know?
Some disciplines do. The policy of the university is students need to be assessed against criteria. So you can't actually mark them on participation or attendance. You need to have some form of other assessment related to that activity that they were being assessed on to be able to be assessed against criteria. So there are some subjects that do it, certainly allied health related subjects where it's really, really important. They're doing hands-on stuff. If they're touching human bodies and all those sorts of things, and that's going to be part of their role when they in their career, well, they really do need to be there. So, and sometimes all that's congregated together as part of a res school rather than happening throughout the term. So it just all depends on subjects. I know, and speaking about after hours stuff, you mentioned kids and that sort of stuff. If you're going to do something after hours, it's, from what I understand, the time frame of about 8 o'clock, although it's a little bit late maybe for us, but for most of our students with families and that sort of stuff, and young kids, they're in bed. So it's after dinner time, it's after bedtimes, and it works for them at that time. So that's something to consider when you're thinking about it. And certainly, as I did with you guys, and certainly Design for Learning, getting the students to give you some indication of times is also helpful. So we did the doodle poll to help give me a better idea of when things would be suitable. So then when I did do the sessions, I knew I would at least have 3 or 4 attending, so I could get some questions, and it'd be beneficial for everybody who watched afterwards rather than just watching me talk to the camera when nobody there. So yeah, that's on there. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you. That was great.
I have a question.
Okay, Jay, and then Stephanie. I saw her hand go up as well.
I was wondering, I've got an hour free, and when it keeps asking for an upgrade to professional, and so we can have 4 hours. Not that I would ever have a 4-hour session with my students. But how much does that cost, and does CQU support that, or do we? How does that work?
It's about $29 US a month if you wanted to get your own. So it's not all that expensive to do. Some schools have bought a license. I know my unit has bought a 10 license pack. So it's divvied up amongst the academics and the people who need it in our unit. The university is currently trialling Zoom. as part of its, not a replacement for ISL, but certainly looking at it as a replacement to Collaborate. So all those pilots are undergoing as well. So the university is seriously looking at incorporating Zoom at an enterprise level, which would mean everybody would have it and you wouldn't have those time restrictions.
At this point, if you get if you use it and you just use it under the free license, one-on-one interface is free and unlimited time. But the minute you get a group, so 3 or more people, it's limited to 40 minutes, but you can still do group things. But as I say, it cuts off at that 40 minutes. We were using Zoom to practice between Louise and Michael and myself, and then just done that 40-minute, we just, you can be in the middle of a sentence and it's gone. It does give you a little bit of warning, but still it pops out. But if you're wanting to use it just one-on-one, it's really good, unlimited, and once if you pay for the actual thing. It's not excessively expensive, but I know as Cherie said, certain different areas of the uni have paid for the license that you can use.
So that's what the corporate credit card is for. Okay, thank you.
Stephanie, you had a question.
Yeah, I don't have a Zoom license, and question because I got stuck there because obviously our presentation started and I'd chosen the wrong screen to share, because when you start the slideshow, PowerPoint brings up on the wrong one. We should have practiced that probably earlier. Is it possible to somehow change the screen that you're sharing if you've got 2 screens? Because I've got...
You should be able to actually just stop the share screen and then go back, and when you hit share screen, you get an option to share desktop 1, desktop 2, or whatever you've got on.
I chose the wrong one originally, and I was then just scared to do anything about it. And
I tend to have the presentation up and running beforehand, so that when I go to share screen, I know exactly where to go to. So if you have your presentation running on, in the background, you can then just go straight to it.
Thank you.
Can I just say that that just we had actually practiced that I was going to take the control of the screens, but all morning while we've Steph and we've been talking, my internet's been cutting out, and just before I said, Steph, maybe it's a really better idea. So he had actually practiced, but my internet is shocking here where I live. And poor Steph, my heart went out for you because because we had practiced, and then to be thrown into the deep end, and so that was my internet.
You're going to have to take control, and our last session cut out, and we had to come on here. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, well, that's a problem. When we practiced our 3rd Zoom session of practicing, we found it was pretty slow and it was a bit weird. So with our distance students, if the ones that are in those dodgy areas, it could be a bit painful, so it's just another option, I guess. So we'll put it out there.
Just to add to that, Louise, certainly if people are in areas of dodgy internet, get them to turn the video off. So you can still hear them if they're speaking, but you don't necessarily always need to see them unless they're sharing screen for something. So get them to turn their video off, and that should make it a bit easier around the audio.
And then you won't see a meeting and all that. Like me, sorry.
You made a point in your presentation that you, having shared the screen and everything else, just to let everybody know, when I stop the recording and we end the meeting, then it processes the recording and produces it as an MP4. So then I then go into Moodle and upload it as a file activity, and that will put it into Moodle. There's another choice of where to put your videos, and Damien, the other teacher who teaches this course, uses a cloud-based, the Zoom cloud-based option for storing his videos. So they're the options that you've got once you've got your recording in your hot little hand as to what you can do with it, and then you'd share it from the cloud, or I've uploaded them as activities.
Sorry, just one last thing about, Susan was asking about how we're going to get students in, because I know Collaborate, Tanya had one person the other day, I think, next to my mentor there. But it's, I just lost what I was going to say. Yes, from that introduction YouTube video at the start, I just sent the link, and I found a lot of distance students got back to me. They saw me, And, well, I don't think everyone would have viewed it, but I can see from YouTube how many have viewed it. And I thought, oh, it started that connection straight away. So we don't want Zoom, you know, every week replacing almost like internal. It's more just that it's closer to the end of the course with these big assignments after midway. You know, and I've had students email and even a few phone calls. And you're building the relationship the whole way through. So by the time you get to those sessions, you might think, oh yeah, I know Louise. Yeah, I'll jump in there. I know her now. And it's all about relationships. But you know, there's always those students that won't want the help. But then it's there. It's another option. Anyway.
Lovely. Thank you, everyone. We are just on 1 o'clock, which means we should be officially closing. Are there any other questions from anybody about any of the presentations or any comments about the event?
I just want to say I found it very interesting. I've got a few notes here of different programs and things I'm going to look up and do a bit of research into. Yeah, it was a really interesting process to go through.
Thank you, Katrina.